this is... Shut up, fan. This is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I'm going to do something different today. I don't think I've ever physically done this before in this way, but Sunday chat today is going to be looking at orchids. Fast. I've got to water my mounts, so you have to excuse Scruffy today. Tough. The words are the same whether I've had a shave or not. But yeah, Scruffy today. It's just one of those days. I'm going to relax this afternoon with some wine and some cheese and biscuits and watch the rugby. A bit of like I did yesterday, although I did miss some of it yesterday because we had a society Zoom meeting in the afternoon. But I watched the important one in the evening. So today I need to water my mounts. Now I do these in 3 sections. The first one is the big one, and that's the one I'm going to film. So this is the bit I've never done before. I'm going to move my watering table from where it lives in the corner. Actually, I need to move the camera first. So you're going to lose sight of my pretty face. What do you mean, oh good? Damn cheek. But I need to lower the camera down so that you can see what's going on. And in addition to that, I'll need to hold plants up to the camera. The camera's right inside the lounge today to be far enough back that this is all going to work, I think. So I'm going to put my table there. So that's now on camera. Face gone. Good. It's a scruffy face today anyway. And today is a flush anyway. Quite honestly with my mounts, most days are flushes. They're not getting a lot of food yet. They will get a bit of an increase in feed when they start growing more actively. I mean, they are coming into life now. But that's the object of today, is to water my first set of mounts and film it as I go, and I'll stop on individual plants. They may get 2 words, they might get a couple of sentences, but not a lot. So we start up here. I've got a sequence so that nothing gets missed. And to be able to water something, you first need some water. Now my method, yes, I share water, but I try not to share too much at a time. So I put a small amount in there and I start watering until that's virtually gone, and then I put some fresh in. So yeah, it gets topped up every now and again. That's Tiny Twinkle, that's just coming back into growth. Good blooming this year, well pleased. This moss on this mount is alive and nicely growing, nicely attached, and the roots are buried in amongst it. Probably another year on that mount. I might get away with 2 before it starts hanging over the side of the mount and I start getting aerial roots, at which point it will get redone. Next is a black hair type. It's got a label on it that I can't read. Coriniferum. It's a relatively new plant. It grew that cane last year and it's growing on through the winter. It's still growing. So this is what I got when I bought it. That's what it's doing now, and it's produced a nice root system for the size of the plant. So that one's coming on nicely, and it's quite possible that that latest cane, when it finishes growing, may actually bloom. The black hair types tend to push up and push on, and eventually they will provide a terminal leaf, at which point they're capable of budding, because they tend to bud on the apex first time round. That is Dendrobium something or other, Harveyanum. Virtually dead, but it does have one little new growth that's managed to maintain itself and have a couple of leaves on it, which means it can now attempt a little bit of photosynthesis. That's been recovering for 2 years. The reason it's still here is because I absolutely adore the blooms, and in addition to that, certainly now Brexit has kicked in, I probably never get one again. Next one is the Mexicoa. Now this is one of our project plants, so I don't want to go mad on this, although we've done the Oncidium? Yes, we have. But this one's got 2 new growths pushing on, and some active roots. So I'm pleased with that. That is also came like that on the mount, and the mount has live moss on as well. So that's doing okay. Pushing on. Now we get up into this corner. This is one of the Oncidium Red Fantasy, a twinkle cross, and that was split up into lots of pieces and mounted, and unfortunately it's on collected sphagnum moss, which just doesn't work. It dries too fast. It's swamp moss basically, so it doesn't lend itself to ever going dry. I will go and collect some tree moss in the not too distant future, which if I collect it off of fallen trees, it's growing on bark now, isn't it? So when I collect it and bring it home and put it on bark, it's happy. And it doesn't seem to mind drying out for a day or two, quite so much anyway. This, we don't know what this is. This came from Jeff's. It's an Oncidium type, but what it is I don't know. But lovely strong new growth there, and another one coming up the back of the plant where that dead leaf is. So that seems to be okay, and that's got some live moss on it that's yet to get established, because obviously that's quite a new mount, or relatively new. That's one of the yellow twinkles that's coming into growth, finished blooming. The yellow twinkles were the last to bloom this year, and quite honestly lasted the longest. They did really well. That's another one of those red fantasy ones that's not doing very well at all. I'm going to end up throwing that soon. If it doesn't chuck out a new growth soon, this version of that can go. It's the worst of them, and even if it does start to grow, it's just two tiny little pieces. I don't think it's ever going to do that well. Not that piece. That is the other yellow twinkle, I believe. That's already coming back into growth. So this was a manky piece that got mounted. I didn't even expect it to grow, but it did, and it managed to flower spike. This year, I hope it pushes up 2 or 3 new growths. But we're in the wait and see for that one. That's another twinkle. I think that is the cinnamon one. That is coming into growth. Yeah, sorry. Now I've messed myself up, haven't I? I can see a couple of scale in one place on there, and my trusty little spray is the other side of the camera. So I'll have to watch that one next time. Make a mental note. But that's just coming back into growth, several new growths on that. So that's coming on okay. That's got live moss that's taken okay. It should look better as the year goes on. But it's got a hold and it's nice and green. So that's good. And then that's one of the larger twinkles. Forget which one. I'm going to have to get some labels on these, aren't I? Now this one is just coming back into growth, but only just. So this one's had quite a long gap between finishing blooming and pushing out the new growths. Again, that's on live moss, looking quite nice. I'm going to have to watch things because I'm noticing some scale in places. Now none of these have had a systemic spray for some considerable time. They get a spot spray every now and again, but I need to get some systemic on these, or these are going to get a hold if I'm not careful. There's only a few at the moment, but it don't take long. And it's coming into the time of year when they will do their best. Now this, I've been struggling with this for years, and now we have, that's a new growth, new growth, new growth, new growth. And it's an Aliciara, and it's, I forget the name, it's a big long name, it's something like Evening Colours the Gloaming. We've got root growth in places, just there. So this is coming back into life. And I've kept struggling with this over all this time because, again, I would never get it again if I lost it. And in addition to that, the colours on the blooms are absolutely stunning because they're unusual. And they are shades of brown, cream and pink. Sounds an odd combination, doesn't it? They're also, being an Aliciara, they're odontoglossum shaped blooms, so they've got that large, somewhere in between a sort of old-fashioned odont and a spider orchid, that sort of shape. These two I'm just doing now. One of them is sweet sugar, one of them is what's left of Shelob Tolkien. But this one's got a new growth just starting and has quite a bit of root growth recently. The other one's not doing much, but it's alive. So those two are change of style with those. They came off a pot and onto a mount. And then that's probably my rarest orchid. I can never pronounce it. Fangxin Shenensi. Comes from Yunnan in China and was only discovered in 2010. And it's coming into growth quite nicely now. It's got this new growth that it started in the middle of winter. There's another one at the base and another little one there. So hopefully we'll get some larger canes this year. But it's a young plant. So basically only found in that particular valley on that particular mountain. And only recently discovered, so pretty rare, that one. Right, so that's that lot. Then I do these, and just go round the ones that are, these are ones that I say are not in their normal place because they're in bloom, so I move them. So it's not where they normally live. Getting a bit low in there, so we top that up. So that's the little lemon drops crossed with something or other Vitellina, Encyclia Vitellina. I'm not going to leave those blooms on there much longer because the plant's struggling after a bad case of rot. My only Tolumnia in bloom, that came from Lynn. That's my only one that fits into that category because it's not one of my older ones and it's not one of the set that came from Schwerter not long ago. It's in between the two. So this one's sort of, as far as where I got it or when I got it, is sort of on its own. But nice set of blooms on there. This was already mounted when it was given to me, so that's not my mount. And then my Leylonia Joyce Hilton. Lovely live moss on the top of that mount, nice and green. Nearly finished blooming now, had 4 lovely spikes. It will probably take a rest now and push up some new growths through the summer, mature into the autumn, put up some roots somewhere in there, and then eventually the new spikes will form, ready to bloom probably again midwinter. Right, I've got a couple tucked under here. Now, not that long ago, people thought I'd gone mad because I decided to mount a Masdevallia. Those 2 new growths have grown nearly an inch since that went on the mount, as opposed to staying a year in a pot with moss and doing absolutely nothing. I'm going to have to start watering that a bit more often, because at the moment it gets done with my mounts, and this is the 3rd day. Well, obviously that moss was dry before I got to it. That's my other Victoria Regina, the little one that I was given. And the new cane on it is still growing. It hasn't finished growing yet. It's grown all through the winter. A fair bit of last year and on through the winter. I would now like to see 1 or more new canes on that. That would be good. And then we've got one of my mounted Phalaenopsis. That one's doing fine, despite the lower temperatures out here. It's got a good root system. Very short on the moss, this one. Probably grow a bit better if it had a bit more moss. but it's pushed out quite a few new roots recently. The roots hydrate very, very well. As soon as the water touches them, they go green. So they're doing okay. Now, I've just got water in the crown, which I could leave. It would do it no harm, but we just as well huff and puff it out. Right, so this is a Psychopsis that is struggling badly. It's going to lose that leaf soon, possibly that one. That's its latest growth and therefore new leaf, and it's the only one. So I'm hoping that with the warmer temperatures this might start growing a bit better. Obviously not too happy through the winter. That new growth sort of grew towards the end of last year. And then this one is another little Phalaenopsis that's decided to start growing something. It looks awfully like another spike. I don't want spikes, I want roots. That is the tattiest, useless root system I think I've ever seen. It needs to grow some flipping roots. I might have to accept that this one is probably quite close to some species and not a really, really complex hybrid. And as such, it might like to stay moist a bit longer. It's certainly not a happy plant. Far from it, in fact. So you might have to put that one back in a pot. You could try it in the cocoa husk, perhaps, as I've got that now, as an alternative. Right, that's that. Then we come up here, and everything up there gets done in this set. This is my Sinilli that looks really bad at the moment, but we're not going to worry about it, simply because it's dropping its leaves towards the end of the winter, a precursor to hopefully pushing some new growths out. And we may get some buds on it. I always say with Sinilli that I might get some buds, because it's just one of those that I've got no guarantee it's going to bloom. No guarantee at all. It may or may not. It has produced some new growths, and in theory those and possibly some of the older ones could push some buds up. But we're not going to know for a while yet, I don't think. That's that one. Then we come on to the Orchid. They've got their backs to the brightest light. That's the one that I can never remember the name, that's really long, and that's a cluster of small plants on a mount. They are young plants. They're all actively growing, and there's a lovely nice big fat new root that's pushed out off of one of them. So it's doing okay, but they are young plants, so we won't see any blooms on there for a while, I don't think. But nonetheless, it's growing okay, that's the main thing. Next one is my Orchid fastuosa. It's just producing its second new leaf since I got it, and very, very, very fine root system on there. And nonetheless, they still need to dry out. I would say that that one could be treated as near as damn it like a Tolumnia as far as the roots are concerned, but not as far as the leaves are concerned, because if you put it in Tolumnia light, it'll burn. That's one of those that likes a sort of shadier position. Now this is Mr. Sidii, and out of the Orchid, this one likes higher light with humidity. Now this one's grown a new leaf, it's now growing another one, also has a nice new root starting. This came as two plants on a mount, and I separated them simply because I got clobbered once in a show where I had more than one plant on a mount, and it was instantly said, as I decided to register, that you can't show that, that's more than one plant. So I'm aware of that now. I wasn't at the time, but I am now. So I split it into two. That's the smaller of the two. That has grown that nice new leaf through the winter. Now all of these should pick up. Once we get this nicer weather, we get day lengths that are more akin to what they would be useful, coming from Madagascar or Africa in some cases. Water in the crown again. So they should pick up when the weather gets better. my Dendrobium glomeratum that nearly went in the bin. Oh, this was so close, because that's all I had, was these tatty little canes. But at the base you can now see that's coming back into growth quite nicely. Got some lovely new growth there with roots. So just about saved by the bell, that one. Really, only just. It was on its way out. And I just saw the nubbins. I'd literally picked it up and got it into the dining room and put it on the table ready to go out with the dead leaves and bits of things that I collect in there. And then when I've got enough I take them out to the recycling bin. And that one got in as far as the dining room and then just about made it. My little bulbophyllum species, Pomilio, that is maturing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 new growths at the moment, and that seems quite happy on that mount. Some aerial roots, but it's coping okay because there's enough roots in the live moss, even though there's some aerial ones as well. And if you've got a mount with moss, you're creating a microclimate, because when you water it, the moss is absolutely soaking wet. Well, until it dries, it's giving off moisture into that little microclimate around the plant, which helps the aerial roots. So that one, and then the last one from up here is Dendrobium conico. That's a Victoria Regina crossed with Goldschmidtianum, I believe. Now, looking at the plant that way up, this is all the stuff I've grown up here. These are my canes. And then looking at it from down here, a lot of these canes were on it when I got it. It blooms almost perpetually, but not. And that is unusual because I know Victoria Regina isn't a constant bloomer. It comes in spurts. It's not once a year. It can bloom more than once a year. But the Goldschmidtianum I know nothing about. So maybe that's where this one gets its almost perpetual blooming from. Possibly. You notice I just picked stuff up and put it. Everything's got its place. I know where it came from, I know where I put it to drip, and I therefore know when and where it goes back. Right, this is the set of new Tolumnias now, this next 4. So these are the ones that came from Schwerter. This one's called Bloody Bird. Sounds like I'm talking about the wood pigeons that wake me up first thing in the morning, and the crows and the magpies. That's a nice plant. The moss hasn't taken yet. It's still a bit brown in between waterings, but a marvellous set of roots coming out here. Right over here as well. You know, that's a root that's reached the edge of the mount. So this is growing nicely and lovely new growth pushing out. Well pleased with that one. It is possible it will bloom on this when it matures, if not almost definitely that. So we should see some blooms on that in the not too distant future. It's another one of the Schwerter ones, no tag on that one, and basically it's a much smaller plant, new roots growing and a new growth pushing up there, so it's coming on. You have to bear in mind with Tolumnias, they vary a lot in size, physically, the size of the fans. And as such, you can get one that you think is a young plant when in fact it's a small plant and it's actually blooming size. So you have to sort of watch that sometimes. This is another sort of smaller one. This has got a new fan pushing on here with another one starting at the base, and again some good root activity going on. And the moss on there doesn't look so good. So when I do eventually collect some forest moss, I might add a little bit to that one. But amazing how fast the Tolumnia roots take on water. You know, they almost, you know, they're green almost as soon as the water touches them, unless they're brand new roots, in which case they stay white for a bit. Again, this one's growing sideways. Be better to look at from the back. That's its latest fan, which is probably going to bloom, and it's pushing up another one behind it. So this one is trying to get round the back of the mount slowly but surely. Lots of new roots coming in many places, so more than happy with that one. And that one, that's Mocha Dot, or Mocha Dot, that would probably be pronounced. So that's those four. They're the new Tulumnias, that set. Right, that is Dendrobium anosmum, and it was a kiki that I broke off. It's starting to look as though it's going to lose its leaves, so autumn is coming, and as yet we haven't got a new growth, but the base of the plant is swelling, so I suspect there's a new growth coming soon. So that's that. This is getting watered, despite the fact that's a winter rester. I'm trying to get that to burst into life. So that's why it's getting watered, even though it's not actively growing at the moment. I'm trying to force it to grow. Now this is Primulinum variety Laos. Again, a winter resting type. I grew those two canes last year. They're not full size, but they're very plump, so they're a bit short. But at the base you can see I've got two new growths coming, so this is back in growth now, which implies it's not going to bloom, and I didn't expect it to. The canes are a bit short. Now it's possible the variety Laos is actually a smaller plant, generally speaking. Now I don't know that, and I've yet to see it written down anywhere, but it could be that the canes on the variety Laos are shorter than the standard variety. This is a nobly type Comic King. That was a kiki from Rachel, which has, see if I can get it in the light, we've got a couple of buds pushing out on that cane, and we've got a couple started near the top of this cane now, so that's coming into flower. I'm sure somebody's going to say, how do you know they're not kikis? They just aren't. So that's that one. See, now that one's got roots around the back of the mount. If you do get roots go around the back of your mount, make sure you water them, won't you? Because they'll die otherwise. They'll just fail. It's not worth it. Right, and up here, this is my Dendrobium tortilli, which has two lovely new growths starting. These are the canes I grew last year. I don't know whether they're as long as they should be, but they are very healthy and fat, with nice green leaves. Yeah, those two canes could produce us some blooms. They may do. If not, I'm confident that the next two canes will, even if those two don't. So that's coming back into growth. Often that implies that it's not going to bloom, but being what was, you know, a kiki basically, who knows, it may. Right, so now we're on to the last of this lot, which is my older Tulumnias. Now this is Tulumnia Peach, probably the one I've had the longest, quite honestly. This is chucking all its new growth out on one side at the moment, which is making the plant look a little bit tatty in places, like places like that, where there is very little growth. But there is a little new growth starting there. Well, if that makes it and pushes on, that brings some green back to that side, so I'm not going to disturb it. I was going to strip it off and remount it, but I think it can stay there. But what it does need is the moss replacing, which is a matter of sort of, as best you can, scrape away as much of the old as you can and put some live stuff on the top. And that one's got roots around the back as well. You should get some blooms, should get a spike on at least two of those canes coming soon, coming shortly. That's that one. And this one's a bit unusual because it's on a piece of driftwood. which stayed out in the garden for 2 years to be weathered and get the flipping salt out of it, because it came from an estuary. It didn't come from the seaside, so but nonetheless it would have had salt in it. So and that's got a new fan growing here, and another one down here. Again, that one's looking a bit tatty. Perhaps that could do with a remount as well. But I mean, in the wild, they often creep. So instead of forming a clump, they'll grow linear along a little twiggy branch, and they'll just progress along there, and they'll just leave the old fans behind to die back. That's that one. And the last two, these are my very old ones that came from the French nursery and have never grown that well. But then they did have scale to battle with twice. They've had 2 lots. But that one's pushing up a nice new growth. I think this one is going to recover quite nicely now. Got some new roots, and that is Jarrac Firm Hickory, that one. But it's I wouldn't say it was healthy, but it's growing and it is producing some roots. So it has the capability of getting better. That's that one. And the last one, and that is Jarrac Flyer Red Butterfly. This is recovering from being very unhealthy. Nice new growth coming there, which is yet to start roots, but there's a second new growth that may push on as well, so that could recover. Again, you know, could do with some warmer weather. It's been a bit cool for it in the winter, and we'll see how it goes. Right, let's put my table back where it goes, because that lot now just get left to drip. I won't touch those again for 15-20 minutes, and then I'll pick up on them and they'll go back, and the next lot will get watered. Now, how cold is my coffee, I wonder? Do you know, that's still warm. Anyway, I'll just stick the camera up in the air to say my ugly puss back in. Right, so that's me watering virtually at the pace and speed I would normally water the mounts. How many did we do? I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. It's around 40. And I have, I believe, about 60. So as you can see, that's the larger percentage. And then I've got those 2 high racks up there. Some of those are winter resters that haven't come back into growth and won't get watered today. So there's 6 on there that get watered, 4, 5 on there that get watered, that's 11, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 on there. So there's about 20 more to do today. That'll be those. The winter resters aren't getting done today. You know, things like the nester and the phyllum and stuff like that. So that's how and me doing my mounts. The only difference if I was feeding them is that the feed water would be in the dining room in there separately, and I keep it in there simply because that's where all my feed is, and I don't want the feed out here. Too cold, too warm, humid atmosphere, no. So the feed stays in the home, so I mix it up in there, and basically I just use my glass that I use to pour the water on, and I just lean in there and get a glass full and pour it in there. So that's the only difference if I'm feeding, is that the bulk of the water stays in there and comes in here a glass at a time, which is like pouring a bit out of there a bit at a time when I'm flushing. So that's the methodology, and mounts are not getting high levels of feed this year, and despite them being in the growing season, they're more likely to get 2 flushes and a feed rather than 3 feeds and a flush like they did last year. I don't believe they're using all that food. I don't believe they're using it. So yes, so that's Sunday done. As I say, I had a society meeting yesterday afternoon, and hopefully arrange for another one same bat time next month. And I've got the other society meeting will be last Friday of the month. That's about the 25th, 26th, something like that. Not much else going on in between as far as that's concerned. And out here there are a few pots lurking that need a repot, but it's very few. Most of the repotting has now been done that I'm planning on doing at this point, this time of year. Not much else. Buds and spikes. I'm not going to get the plants out. My Epidendrum Comet Valley, or whatever it is, those spikes have been maintained despite repotting it, so they're still pushing on. They're not showing colour yet. I've got my Brassia Vericosa in there that we had a look at a while ago with the spikes just starting. Those 2 spikes on that growth are pushing on nicely now. One is nearly a foot long. My Aphyllum, or is it Primulinum, one or the other, up there the buds are just starting to show colour now. I am seriously hoping that that opens before the cut-off date for our virtual competition, or virtual show. Well, it'll go in one or the other, hopefully. What else did I see buds on? New growths in various places. Saw some buds somewhere else, I can't think. Oh yes, the Dendrobium infundibulum. I nearly said it wrong. Somebody will shoot me if I say that. I used to call it infundibulum because it just sounds Australian, which is where it comes from, I believe. But infundibulum, I believe. And yeah, the zygo's pushing on. Buds are starting to show some spotty bits now, so they're starting to show some of their pattern through. Oh, and can I get at it? Yes. This was a gift from Zena. And it was in bloom when I got it, but it had 0 roots. It was rootless. Zilch, not a light. So I've got dead leaf on it, I'm just pulling off. And we have a spike. Yay! And this is Oncidium chrysomorphum, isn't it? Do you know, I'm sure that's written wrong. No, it's not. Chrysomorphum. I'll get there in a minute. And it should have a lot of relatively small but very attractive blooms on. And if this is blooming now, this bulb matured some time ago, and it's only just blooming now. This new growth coming up the middle of the plant here will be the next one to bloom, but I wonder if it will have to wait as long as this one did, because now we've got roots. Yeah, so anyway, that was a spike I spotted while I was watering last. That's back where it came from. Knocking everything over. Yeah, so yeah, a few things in bud. The other Brassia Vericosa should start pushing some spikes in the not too distant future, and my other Brassia should as well. That's got 2 growths pushing on nicely. Not much else that's new, I mean, so just have to wait. Oh, hang on, we've got another, there's a little, this was, where did this come from? This was one of the Schwerter plants that came as the surprise plants, the birthday plants. Cattleya Little Lemon Drops crossed with Cattleya Why Not? And we got 2 buds on there. So I'm hoping they're going to make it. I mean, the plant hasn't established itself yet. It's only just starting to grow a new root system. It didn't have much of an old one, but so that's dry at the moment because that's the next set that I'll be watering. So you can go back up where you came from, or I shall get in the muddle. Right, so that's it for today. So just a look at watering the mounts and chatting about some of them. A lot of those there was not much to say. You know, in a lot of the twinkles were up there. They finished blooming. They will now grow through the growing season, ready for spikes to start in the autumn and take the whole of the winter before they actually bloom, because that's how they are. Anyway, project plants, 2021 project plants. I'm hoping to film part 2 either tomorrow or Tuesday. It'll be dependent on weather, because what I wouldn't do is try and film that type of video when it's raining because of the racket the rain makes on the roof. So weather dependent, I'll hopefully get part 2 done tomorrow and processed. I haven't got much else to do. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Hope you enjoyed that. And again, if you're here at this point in the video and you're watching it and you're not subscribed, as I'm breaking them in for a friend, then perhaps you might think about doing so. It helps the channel. And click the old thumbs up as well if you appreciate what you've seen. Yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.